This is the American Aboriginals. We are back with another really important video that I have been wanting to make for some time now. And it's really vital that, you know, we, as I should say, as researchers, that we dive really deep with this because I can feel and see that there are a lot of assaults on I don't want to just say truth seekers, but people who are really focused on reversing so much of what's been happening to us. And I also want to put in a little bit of I want to say something to folks who come on to our page, the American Aboriginals. As you guys know, I love research. I'm in research and doing deep dives every day. I read books, articles, everything I can get my hands on. And I also have amazing mentors in my life. So when people come onto the page and have thoughts and feelings and opinions, that's fine. But I am in this space of knowing, not in the space of feeling. So I want to just put that out there that I'm going to be blocking folks. I'm going to be real. Folks are getting blocked. I'm not going to be entertaining crazy. I'm not going to be entertaining people who want to be trolls and want to block information. That is not what we're trying to do here. We are trying to learn, right? So, which leads me to this video that I've been, again, knowing that it's important to do this one because it's been on my heart for some time now. And I titled this "The Dumbing Down of the American Aboriginal: From Temples to Tents." And of course, this imagery is very powerful because it's a reminder of where we have come from and how low we have come. But we don't have to stay that way, because I think it's really important to know that with every situation or problem that you have, there is a solution. You just have to be willing to do the work. So I want to dive in and talk about racism versus genocide a little bit, because I think when we start talking about what's been happening to us as Aboriginals, we tend to lump things into the racism category. And I want to really give definitions around what these two words are in real time. Racism is, according to the Webster Dictionary, the systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another, right? So we all know this. But I like to use the term genocide because genocide is definitely much more focused. It's much more definitive, because that is really what's been happening to us. And genocide, as you can see here, is the deliberate and systemic destruction of a racial, political, or cultural group. And that is exactly what has been happening to us since the 1500s, since these lands were visited by foreign people, right? So, and examples of genocide, right? And again, we can talk about racism, but when you talk about racism, you have to be really, really specific. And I'm giving you very specific examples of what genocide is and what has happened. And as you can see, there's a list of them here: Trail of Tears, which we all know of lynchings, pogroms, which is, the Tulsa and Rosewood massacres. There's been so many, as you know. Biological warfare, i.e. the Tuskegee experiments, forced sterilizations, radiation experiments, drug experiments, mass incarceration, the death penalty, and of course, false history, right? So all of these are very, very specific examples of genocide. And that is the term I will continue to be using as we move forward, because again, racism to me is a very vague term. Now, I wanted to show you an example of what genocide looks like. And sometimes you see this come out in the writings of various people, but this particular one comes from Margaret Singer. of Planned Parenthood. And she was writing a letter to W.E.B. Du Bois about an experiment or series of things she wanted to test in the quote-unquote Negro community. She says, "The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We do not want the word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it occurs to any of their more rebellious members." So as you can see here, she was writing to Du Bois and telling him that, hey, we're going to use the ministers of these churches to ensure that my plans for them go through. And of course, there was considerable pushback once the churches realized what she was doing. And of course, that's a whole nother video, which I will be focusing on her at a later date. But just wanted to let you know that she's just one example of an individual in history that was really focused on making sure that her plan of genocide happened for us. And we know that that was successful. So again, as you guys know, I'm always going to give you resources so that you can do this research on your own, right? These are books that I've read. These are things that I would love for you to read as well, because it gives you so much context to what's been happening to us. And these are all really well documented books that will set you on your path and your journey so that you move from thoughts and feelings and opinion to actual facts. And yes, just read Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington, Slavery by Another Name, and of course the Negro Project. So again, none of these are books that I'm getting paid to promote, but these are just books that were part of my erudition. And sometimes I go back and I reread them because they're so vital and informational. So one of the most extreme form of genocide has come in the form of public school education. And the reason why I want to focus on education right now is because I think that's why so many of us find ourselves in this loop, this continual loop of oppression and disagreement and not sure which way to go forward. Because for many of us, we have been educated pretty similarly. We've gone through the kindergarten and the high school and the college, and we've pretty much all gotten the same information. And that is part of the problem, right? Because we've not been given true erudition. So I want to focus on one particular book called The Country School of Tomorrow, which was written by Frederick T. Gates back in the early 1800s. And he was the chairman of the General Education Board. And some of you, again, may be familiar with this book, which is amazing. I hope that you've read it thoroughly. But for those of you who are not hearing about this or have heard it in passing, I really want to stress what was happening here. Now, The Country School of Tomorrow was written by the General Board of Education. And who were they? Well, they formed in 1902 and dissolved in 1964. They were a private organization which supported higher education and medical schools in the U.S. They also focused on schools in the South that had white and black rural folks, or country folks as you call them. And they also were there to help them modernize farming practices, right? So this was the foundation of what we now know to be the public school education, okay? Now, the board was created in 1902 after John D. Rockefeller donated $1 million to its cause. Now, you all know who he is. You've heard his name before, that name Rockefeller. And for those who are not familiar with who he was, he owned the Standard Oil Company, now known as ExxonMobil. So as you know, he had a whole lot of money, and he gave a whole lot of it to this particular private organization, and basically was shaping and forming what it was going to be in the future. Now, for many of you who do not know, his wife was Laura Spellman. Yes, that's Spellman. Spellman, who founded Spellman University, right? And the Rockefeller family would eventually give over $180 million to fund the board. That's a lot of money. Now, in today's dollars, that's $1.4 trillion. $1.4 trillion. Now, another interesting thing is, and this, of course, is another video that we can talk about later, but if you guys notice, Laura Spellman she's mixed race. She is mixed race. Now, of course, in older pictures, you see her, she looks older. She looks like an older Caucasian lady, but she was mixed race. So, and you say to yourself, sometimes the people who kind of sort of look like us, they're not necessarily helping us, are they? So, so let me also get into the vision of the General Education Board. And again, this is a quote I want many of you guys to internalize, because you're going to understand and really see what their objective was. Now, I won't read the whole paragraph, but in essence, it says, let us at least yield ourselves to the gratifications of a beautiful dream that there is. In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from our minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or of science. We are not to raise up from among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians. Nor will we cherish even the humbler ambition to raise up from among them lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we now have ample supply. We are to follow the admonitions of the good apostle who said, mind not high things, but condescend to men of low degree. So I'm going to let that sit with you guys for a minute, because as you can see, this vision of what they had was not to educate the simple folks, but just to give them just enough to survive. So as you can see, this was a vision that was very much based on class. And they already looked at the people as being beneath them. Okay? So this is who was educating folks back in the day. This was the philosophy and the vision that they used to apply the curriculum, to apply the teachings, all the lessons, everything, right? So what were those lessons? Well, they were teaching lessons in health and hygiene, farming, sanitation of a home, study of clothing, and physical recreation, right? So when you guys read that book, read through the whole Country School of Tomorrow, you can see specifically what they were teaching. But for now, what you guys see here is that they were focusing a great deal on the basics of life. The basics. They weren't teaching you necessarily law. They weren't teaching you anything that was about receiving true erudition. It was about you becoming a worker. And on page 8 of the book, they're quoted as saying, every girl and boy shall be taught what to eat, and how to cook. And throughout this book, you see all of these kind of commandments, basically, of how they were going to be teaching the Black and white poor students. And so, of course, I always say, was this really about education? When you look through the book, you'll see that part of their motivation for getting certain types of education into these country schools was so that you could be a better worker. For instance, in this particular section, their knowledge of seed selection and cotton culture, if universally applied, would double the cotton crop and bring to the cotton raiser, at the very least, $240 million added profits annually. One remarks in passing that this possible increase of $240 million net profit on cotton alone in 1 year is perhaps 4 times the entire money value of all the property which all the institutions of higher learning in the Cotton Belt have amassed in 2 generations. So again, we know some of this, right? In terms of how we see our public school education today, that we are taught not to necessarily be men and women of letters, but to be better workers, right? The same still applies. Now, again, I'm going to always give you guys resources to understand and put into context of things. So the reason why I do this is because I want you guys to understand that when the conqueror, the colonizer, whatever you want to call them, came to this country, their vision was not to make you better. Their vision was to keep you where you needed to be so that you can simply be the worker. So they take everything from you and then repackage it right back to you. So read these books here. These are, again, a part of really, really getting your erudition up, because what you'll see here is that as far as the Aboriginal was concerned, he was running the joint. He was running things. Okay? But over a period of time, systemically, things begin to just change dramatically for us. And, to me, I always go back to the more you know, the less people can give you BS. But I wanted to focus primarily on this Country School of Tomorrow, that book, and what the philosophy was from the General Board of Education, so that you understood what you were dealing with, and that it is about reversing everything that has been taught to you. Because anything that has been taught to you has not been for your benefit. It has been to keep you enslaved. It has been to keep giving you false history, false hope, false everything. And you got to move away from that. They're playing chess with you, and we keep playing checkers, and we got to stop that. So a lot of folks will question things that I say here on this channel. And again, that's fine. But you have to give me some information, new research, not old research, but new updated research, because I'm reading every day. And I would encourage you guys to do the same, not because, you're doing it for yourselves, but for your legacy, for your families, so that you are no longer being dumbed down, right? Again, from temples to tents. We have to reverse that. One of the biggest statistics I read recently was that the urban housing department said that 50% of the families who are homeless right now are quote unquote Black and African American. That's a shame. Now we'll say, of course, there's racism and they became homeless because of, economic uncertainty and job loss and everything. But really, it's genocide. Start using that word. It's genocide. And this took a long time to happen. And so now we can, with effort, can reverse this. And it doesn't have to take us another 200-300 years to reverse it. We can do it right now today. But you got to get your erudition up, and you got to read, and you got to understand what's happening to you, and understand that some of these folks out here, they have deliberately made this their mission to keep you conquered. That's it, to keep you conquered. So that is the video for today. Of course, there'll be more. I welcome all of your intelligent questions. And let's share some knowledge, because that's what it's about. I'll talk to you guys soon.